Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second day of Big Data Days 2023. I'm super excited to have all of you back today for what is promising to be a great day of Big Data Days. Yesterday, we already had 14 different sessions from speakers all over the world, and today we will continue with the program. We have built an excellent program and great lineup of speakers today. In the first 5 minutes, I will provide some introductions to all of you who are joining maybe for the first day and showcase what you can expect before I will introduce our keynote speaker. Good. As you know, if you've signed in yesterday, we have two hosts that will be providing the tracks today. My name is Jan-Willem Middelburg, and I will be your host for track 1 today. My colleague, John Wee, will be managing the other track. And every hour, you will need to choose between one of the two sessions that are hosted simultaneously. Note that this year, we have 28 different sessions from representatives all over the world. And as you know from Big Data Days, we follow a round-the-clock principle so that every moment of the day, people can join from different parts of the world. This event would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors. As you all know, this event is free of charge for all of the participants. And I would like to extend a special thank you to our partners who make this event possible, especially Tencent, APMG International, and Kogan Page as being our gold sponsors, and Accenture Advisors, Cascade IT, HighLogic, Sapiens, MindMagic, Chiwu, and Sybians for being our silver sponsors this year. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because without the generous support of these sponsors, this event would not be possible. So what do we have in store for you today? We have, similar to yesterday, start with a keynote session. And in the waiting room, we already have Mr. Aamar Hussain, who is going to talk about data and AI solutions. And the title of his presentation will be From Insights to Impact. After that, we have a 2-track program in which every hour we will have a new session starting. There's one slight amendment that we needed to make today. Unfortunately, Professor Dr. Angela Lee from Sunway University is down with COVID, so her session is unfortunately cancelled. Other than that, the program remains as we have composed it over the last few weeks. Good. So a couple of keynotes from our sponsors. First of all, note that Kogan Page, similar like yesterday, has a promotional activity and has made a 20% discount on all of their books, which are accessible through their bookstore. With the discount code BigData20, you will get a 20% discount upon checkout on their website. Note that this code is only valid for this week, so you only have a couple of days left to actually use it. Besides this, we are also giving away 3 copies of the book Be Data Driven from our keynote speaker, Jordan Morrow, who gave an excellent keynote speech yesterday. In case you missed it, his recording is already available on YouTube and on the event website. So if you're interested to learn more around data literacy and how to become data-driven, please watch back his speech. We are distributing 3 copies for the participants that have most questions correct out of the 5 questions that are being asked throughout this conference. So before we get started, let me ask our next question, question number 4 already, from the panel discussion today. The question is, one of the largest generators of big data is social media. Between YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Netflix, which platform generates the largest volume of data? Give me a quick moment to launch the poll. And the poll should be visible for everyone right now. So please take a moment to answer this. I see some mixed answers. That's really good. Good. Unlike yesterday, there's a lot of debate around these questions. That's good. You get 2 more seconds. And let me close the poll. I'll quickly show you the result. I won't show you the answer yet because we will do that at the end of today. And most people think it's YouTube with 44%, followed by Facebook, 38%. After that, Netflix with 13% and Twitter, 6%. So we'll see the right answer at the end of the sessions today. But it's an interesting question in order to win the books by Jordan. Good. So now that we have the logistics out of the way and you know what to expect in day number 2 of Big Data Days, let me introduce our next speaker who's already waiting for his keynote address. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you this morning Mr. Aamar Hussain, who is data and AI solutions leadership and an ex-employee of Microsoft and Google. Mr. Aamar is heavily involved with data and artificial intelligence on a day-to-day basis. Prior to Microsoft, Aamar led the contact center of AI practice at Google and worked with key strategic customers and partners to create and execute customer experience transformation using Google AI and machine learning. Aamar holds a Master's of Science in Information Systems and has over 18 years of industry experience centered around engineering, consulting, and enterprise solutions architectures in a variety of verticals, working with Accenture, BT, and DXC, which is previously known as CSC. Mr. Aamar will be here with us today to talk about how to build data-driven organizations. It is a great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today. Aamar, welcome to Big Data Days 2023.
And thank you so much for the introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to actually talking about this topic and this subject because it's one of my passions and one of the areas that I've devoted my career to for the last 5 to 10 years of my career so far. So I'm really excited and I'm really, really glad to be here, and I'm grateful for the opportunity for speaking at Big Data, Big Data Framework. And I think, I'm looking forward to it. So shall we get started?
Absolutely. If you could take a moment to open up your deck, and then I think we're all set to go.
Excellent. Excellent. Brilliant. Just a quick check. You can see my screen I'm presenting right now.
Yeah, it's perfectly visible.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Well, it's great to know. Well, look, John, thank you so much again, for the warm introduction, and everybody in the panel. Thank you so much for taking your time and coming to this session and listening to us. What a great event. I hear some awesome feedback from yesterday, and some, it looks like you have some brilliant lineup, and you have some very relevant topics actually. At the moment, AI and machine learning and data is everything that is talked about and discussed in the social media. So, I'm very, very, what can I say? I think it's great timing to be talking about this stuff. Look, let me give you a little bit of overview in terms of why I decided to choose this topic and why I'm really passionate about talking about this topic. Now, look, building a data-driven organization, it doesn't happen overnight, and it involves a lot of hard work and leadership. And so one of the areas that I want to focus on here is not necessarily, I feel, in the market that's being discussed as much, is more of the non-technical. I mean, yeah, technology capabilities, definitely it's a big part of it, but a lot of it needs to go into how you strategize your capability. What capability framework do you have? What maturity level you're at? What are the steps you need to take to build that capability? How do you get value from data? And actually, how do you build a culture within your organization to distill a data-driven approach rather than purely focused on a technology driven or a capability driven strategy or a vision that you have for your data driven organization. So just to just to make people aware, my LinkedIn page is there. I'm happy to connect, happy to share details, share network afterwards if you need to, if you have any questions and what have you, and we'll leave a little bit of time in the end also for questions to ask as well. But let's get going. So this is the agenda that I want to cover today in this session. First of all, I want to try to demystify the why, the kind of, some of the key drivers. This may be, fairly obvious for a lot of people, but I think we still really need to look at the reasoning behind why every organization needs to be data driven. Especially given all the developments that are happening at the moment, why this is a critical, pivotal moment right now within any business or anybody out there at the moment that's doing business in this space, in any industry as well, to be honest with you. So I'll have a look at briefly the kind of why behind why data driven is so important and why data driven is really critical for organizations. Then we look at the how and the what. So where do you get started? What are the capabilities you need to have in place? How do you get started on that journey? What are the different steps you need to take, or what are the different uh, pillars that you need to have in place to be able to shift you from the way you are to more being a highly data driven organization. So those are the kind of things that we want to talk about in the kind of how and the what. And then the last component I want to talk about in there is kind of understanding the importance of people and culture. Everything evolves around the people strategy and the culture you have within your organization, especially if you're leading a large change. And if you're trying to make a big transformation within an organization, I think it's pivotal. One of the core components, if not the most important, is the people and the culture aspect of it. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of how you can shift that, what are the things that you can do to make it more successful within your people and your culture aspect of it in order for you to become a data-driven organization. Okay, so let's get started. Right. So, just looking at understanding the why, um, there's a lot of noise at the moment in the market around AI and machine learning, around the uh, volume of data, around the speed of data, but what I want to try to do with this topic, the reason why I chose this topic was to raise awareness of the value driven, rather than a date, more of a kind of just purely looking at the data side of things, right? So how do you create value from being a data driven organization? And how do you line up and align your organization to be able to do that? Rather than stepping straight into a technology driven strategy or a technology driven capability, taking a step back to understand why you need to, what are the reasoning behind becoming a data driven organization. So that's some of the reasons why I decided to go down this path of this topic that I'm talking about here. Now, look, one of the key things that I want you guys to ask yourself when you're looking through this is, just answer this question as just seeing some of the logos come up here. And then I think Ken, and so, Han kind of spoke about some of this in the opening question in the poll that we spoke about earlier on. You see some very similar logos here. But yeah, what's the common denominator that you see among these organizations that are coming up on your screen? Okay, I'll give you 5 seconds to kind of think of that and put either put a comment in the chat or some sort of give me some sort of sign to think, what could that be? The clue could be in the title of this keynote. But yeah, just ask yourself that question, right? And when I was putting together the content here for this particular keynote, I was kind of asking myself question, why is it that some of the biggest and the most valuable organizations, what's the common denominator amongst them? And it's data, right? And you would have quickly thought that it's actually the volume of the data or the huge amount of data they hold. Yeah. But you know what? I think we need to change that mindset a little bit and think about it more from a value, right? What is the what is the value of data that these organizations hold? Like, so what we need to start doing more going, as a industry, is to look at data as an economic asset. Yeah, it needs to be considered as an economic asset. All of these organizations have senior economists, or professionals who know how to make business sense out of data. They have economists working for them, helping them turn data into value driving asset. Right? We need to assess the value of the data. Look at the most valuable companies, like you can see here, and how they've transformed their industries. Look at Netflix, Amazon, Airbnb, Google, Meta. Right? These companies have figured out how to exploit data to find new avenues of revenue. And the companies that are applying technology are now asking the question around how they get value from data. Data by itself has zero value, right? You have data, it doesn't have value. In fact, having lots of data is going to cost you money for storing it. You need to leverage that data to justify the investment. And the value of economic asset is how you use the asset to create the value, right? And this is where I think a lot of the chief data officers, the CDOs, have really struggled in the industry, to kind of articulate that or bring that forward to their businesses, to the organizations. Selling data is not the answer, right? What are the KPIs that you're using to measure the value? And how can you use that data to help optimize the leading indicators, within your business? We have the skill set of technology covered, but there needs to be increased focus on the economic valuation of the data you have. Now, another example is this organization. One example I always use is National Highways, for example, assessing the value of the data. National Highways value data just like any other assets in their organization. National Highways is basically the organization that looks after the roads and the infrastructure within UK. And they basically, the way they looked at the value of the data was that they took it as an asset, just like any other asset they have in the business, and it's valued around 60 billion pounds to National Highways. Astonishing number. It's 50% of the value of roads and 10 times more than the technology assets. Treating data asset as value allows also for better governance, right? When you're going to use data to make decision, to release cash, data strategy, the whole data strategy needs to be a kind of company-wide exercise. And when you can see the value that you are going to be bringing with that data strategy, you have a much more higher chance of adoption from your business, and therefore you have much more chance of people coming on board and allowing and approving and kind of adopting the capabilities and the projects that you are running within building a data-driven organization. So it's really important to turn it into a value discussion rather than purely being a data, volume or data, just a data, having data for the sake of data. Another thing that comes up a lot here is the organizational. There's another challenge that a lot of companies I hear about when I'm talking to customers in the market, is around data literacy and kind of understanding data as being a bit of a challenge within organizations. Well, if you have a value discussion, you can get a lot. The data literacy challenge of that area becomes a lot easier because you know that you can drive value. You're driving value from the data. So one way of putting together like a value, I would say, is put together a value chain or a value map, which answers these four questions. How does your organization create value? What are the KPI metrics that look like in measuring the value? And what is the desired outcome look like? And who are the stakeholders? Like, you need to answer these four questions in order to kind of build a value map of your data. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the kind of the importance of looking at value from the data side of things. Now, if you look at this graph here that I've just put up in the screen right now, if you look here, this is a chart. It highlights the accelerating pace of change in business and the importance of companies adopting to new technologies. You can see right from early if you look at 70, 80, 90, 2000 to 10, 2010, 2020, and the 30s, the way the average lifespan of organizations is steadily coming down. Okay. Now, why is it coming down? The reason why it's coming down is because of rise of digital technologies, things like AI, machine learning, things like ChatGPT that you've heard about, and things like various different large language models, generative AI. Right? There's a lot of innovation, and that basically it fuels the speed at which organizations need to move and need to change. And as you can see, that if you don't embrace these technologies, and if you don't embrace the speed of change, you are in a very big risk of being left behind as an organization. So it just shows you how important it is to make sure that you are making use of the data that you have, and you're taking decisions based on the data that you have as an organization. Okay. Now, this next chart that you can see here, it shows you the uh, you know the market cap, right, of organizations. Now, if you can look at here, typical Fortune 500 companies, they're looking at about 20 odd years, right? Some research that was done. Now, if you look at Google, it went from 8 and then it's decreasing considerably as you go forward onwards from there. And I think I can't remember ChatGPT. I think it must have been, if you look at the users were, I think, the fastest to get 100 million users. But it shows you that you have to be more, um, you have to pivot a lot quicker than you would do within your market, any market that you're in order for you to address, in order for you to react, in order for you to take advantage and actually lead those markets that you're in at the moment. Um, uh, as a way of kind of dealing with disruption and innovation technology change that's coming down the line. And the way you do that is by being data driven, using the data you have to make decisions, to pivot, to move into different avenues, different landscape, different markets that you have, that you can, as a business, to survive and to actually lead and thrive in that, in this environment that we're in at the moment. So, and also I couldn't forget or couldn't leave out this without talking about, couldn't leave out this topic in this talk without talking about the adoption and kind of generative AI, uh, the wave that's going around at the moment. And I think it's very similar to this wave, right? Where you looked at COVID and look what happened with COVID with a lot of organizations. And I think similar would happen, or if there's a big chance of something similar happening, if nothing was done about this side of the fence, around these capabilities here. Now, when you talk about building an AI or machine learning capability, the data conversation or the data behind it becomes absolutely critical for an organization. And the ability for you to have the right data in the right place with the right governance, with the right quality, it's absolutely essential for you to build and take adoption or take successful, meaningful use out of these capabilities and these technologies that you're seeing here that are being released and that are being flooded in the market at the moment. And as an enterprise, it's completely different to take ChatGPT or any of these large language models and use them from a consumer perspective. But it's a completely different ballgame in the enterprise. Enterprises have various different requirements and different landscape for you to be able to make sense and make use of these technologies that are out there at the moment, especially large language models. There's security aspects, there's the audit aspect, there's the transparency aspect, which are still massive question marks amongst a lot of these capabilities that you're seeing at the moment that are being released that nobody has really got an answer for at the moment. And it's a kind of way of experimenting and seeing how this, how it all goes at the moment. So, I just wanted to bring that up, to make note of that, because I think that's really important going forward in becoming a data-driven organization. But I think, if you can get a step ahead, or if you can be on the front foot in becoming a data-driven organization, you have a better chance of making, taking the maximum amount of value from large language models, from generative AI that's out there at the moment. Okay, for example, making sure you use the right use cases, making sure that you don't apply it to the wrong use cases, right? For example, anything that involves sensitive data, anything that involves customer data or patient data, you need to think twice about how you can make sure that you can get anonymization, how you can get synthetic data to test that stuff with, or how you can apply it according to the right use cases to, say, summarize components within an article or within a chat transcription history of that particular data that you have. So these are the kind of things that you need to be mindful of when you're thinking about adoption of these technologies. Now, for me, customer centric is data centric. So if you are envisaging to be a customer centric organization, which every organization wants to be, the fundamentally same thing. To be data driven, you need to focus on your customer, even the stuff customers don't see. I mean, if you go look at in retail, I use it as an example. Look at the supermarkets, like where they place the most convenient foods or most convenient products in order for customers to pick up and then take, the best way to kind of pick those customers up and make sales for those particular products. How do they best lay out the shop floor? All these things have to be done for the sake of the customer, for it to be customer, for you to be customer centric. And for all that, you need data. You need to have your data in the right place. You need to have your data to be able to give customers the personalization and the tailored um, offerings that they require, that you require, the customer expects. They're no longer the customer is a given, it's a table stakes. It's no longer an expectation. It just customers expect that to be there available for them. um, Aligning data to your key business goals, right? So making sure that you use the data you have to align, and you have the right alignment with what you're doing as a business to what the data is telling you in terms of where you're going as a business and as an organization. So those are some of the key components and points there. Now, let's try to demystify some of these terms that I keep hearing about when I talk about whenever we talk about data driven, or whenever we talk about data culture, data transformation, data fluency, digital transformation, data literacy. You hear about all of these terms, buzzwords in the market. What really is a data driven organization? In simple terms, a data driven organization is an organization which effectively and consistently uses data to make decisions across all levels of the company, all levels of the enterprise. This is the data, that is a data-driven organization, an organization which treats the data as a strategic asset, as an economic asset, not a side function or a support function which they can come up and use whenever they feel there's an opportunistic way of doing things. The organization is able to utilize the right data not only for the short term, but for the long term decisions, as well as everyday decisions. Okay, so not just short and long term, but using it in everyday decision making. And there are many dimensions in becoming data driven. Right? There's the culture, investment, people, skills, technology, infrastructure. Let's try to unpick some of these key hurdles in becoming data driven organizations. So there are basically fundamentally four um, components to this, right? So as it's not easy. Organizations are still potentially longer, or they still potentially have a longer road ahead of them in their efforts to become data driven. There was a survey done by New Vantage Partners um, last year where they reported only 26.5% have created a data driven organization, and just 19% indicate that they have established a data culture. It just shows you that there's still a problem, a massive problem in the industry in becoming data driven. But it's because of these major kind of obstacle challenges that you have. There's fundamentally four things that you need to look at focusing on, four pillars that you need to look at focusing on to be able to help you become a data driven organization. Number one, skill set. Like where you build for the team that is creating the solution, data visualization, storytelling, as well as the consumers of the data, which who take on it and basically use the solution. So having the right skill set within the organization, so shifting the kind of skill set aspect of it. They're also moving the needle on the tooling, right? The tooling set. What we mean here is basically the various technologies and solutions, the solutions that you need, where you basically you need a technology strategy to encompass various tooling that you have. So this is the technology capability building technology strategy. Then you have the process aspect, right? So you need to make a shift in the process, how as a business you rewire the processes that you have, that any new capability or data-driven solutions are integrated to the existing business process. Because if you don't do the right shift or the right changes in the process, you're still going to have people using the old process and old technology. You're not going to get the adoption, and then hence you're not going to become, or you're not going to become as data driven as you could. And then also the mindset, right? So you need to, if not, this is possibly the most difficult one to conquer, to move off, to make progress on, is that you can do all the above, but how do you make sure you can overcome the cultural resistance and make people safe and comfortable in using the data-led initiatives that you are embarking on as an organization? So how should data leaders approach these key pillars and these key areas that I'm talking about here, right? Well, this is the best done step by step as an iterative approach, right? Big bang approach over here, it doesn't really work, right? It's too long of a too much of a big jump. But I think and the best way to look at it is to go into small chunks. You have a lot more higher chance of success in doing it that way than having a big bang approach, and it reduces this risk appetite also. The four levers that we've just gone over, basically best to start with the data you have access to. So it's best to start the data you have access to, the analytics capabilities that you have access to, and the tooling and the people you have to start with. Start with small, simple initiatives, and then build a roadmap to solve some of the kind of simple descriptive problems rather than going out and straight away hitting the machine learning and AI problems straight away. And then once you've done the descriptive type of problem, then look at evangelizing this and then kind of rest of the organization and build on that momentum. Okay. And that's how you move forward with this in building a capability. Now, if we talk about what's required to have this build this out to deal with these challenges, that you need to think about having a first thing you need to look at is, in any case, is understand where are you in that baseline. Okay, what you need to think about something called a data maturity framework, which can help you with the data driven transformation. Now, this data maturity framework is basically um, it, it basically built upon these key components that I'm showing you on the slide here. And you know I think it's crucial to make sure that you have a self-assessment, right? And this is what this data maturity assessment gives you. You need to first understand where you are, so that you can understand where you are in terms of data maturity before you can make a plan to kind of path the progress to a more mature level, right? It's a phase of self-discovery. Think about the last time you tried to get fitter as a person, right? You need to start somewhere. You need to, when you say if you're starting to prepare for a marathon or even a new championship or tournament, right? You need to prepare to get somewhere with it. And this is why you need to start somewhere. Data maturity is really your organizational readiness and capability to embrace data-led decisions making. Um, there's really 5 steps that I'm talking about here. You can see the vision, where you assess the vision of the business with the data. Do you have the plan for the data for the short term and for the long term? Planning, are you able to then translate to set of capabilities and roadmaps to build the vision, right? That's the kind of planning aspect. Execution, like how well are you able to execute it? Do you have the tools, the processes? You have the internally within the organization? Do you have to build them, right? Do you have to create new capability? Value realization, okay, how are you able to improve adoption and improve ROI? Very important aspect, very important aspect of the to your becoming improving your maturity assessment. Culture, again, this is again one of the biggest, most important aspect of it. Is there resistance? How ready are the people to adopt a change? So when you assess the organization, look at these 5 areas. Some are completely aligned. However, many are, when I've seen customers do this, many are very good at execution, but they're not very good at the setting the vision and the planning phase, because they haven't they haven't got the right priorities that they need to have in place, basically. So get to really understand where you are on this data maturity framework, and then plan your way ahead from there. So basically, there are different levels of maturity. And here's a good reference chart that I've got here. It's basically a Gartner's data maturity framework. And as you can see there, Level one is where where you have opportunistic usage of the data. Excuse me. Let me just grab a quick cup of water here. Just had a bit of a cough there. Sorry, excuse me about that. Sorry about that. So yeah, level one is basically the opportunistic data use, where organizations are using data opportunistically. Okay, they don't really have a strategy, or they don't really have a they don't really have a plan to use it across the enterprise. And then you go level two. Now level two is where you have pockets of the organization where people are using the data, or where there is a single leader, or very few leaders are starting to use the data to make decisions. And then you move into level three, where adoption is slightly broader, but they don't use it strategically. Data is not used strategically. Then you have level four, where it's gone beyond level three, and almost the entire organization is using it, but they're using it and realizing business ROI. And then you've got level five. Now, the difference between the four and five is that in level five, you view data as a strategic asset and central to business strategy. So, what you need to do is basically have you need to have the data maturity framework assigned in each of these levels to see where are you within skill set, tooling, process, and mindset on each of these levels. And then you need to make progress on each of those levers, those pillars that we spoke about before, in order to move up the curve. This maturity framework that we're talking about here, okay? Now, if we move forward, then let's look at some kind of key steps for building a data-driven organization. Now, to start with, first of all, there are 5 steps. And by the way, this is an iterative approach. Let me tell you this from the start. Like, this is the iterative approach. It's not like a waterfall where you just go from top to bottom, but it's more of an iterative approach. And basically, what you have is, excuse me, I'm getting a bit of a in my thoughts. Anyway, there are 5 key steps in building strategy. The first one is to reflect on the business strategy. Sorry. Yeah, so the first one is business strategy alignment to data. So making sure that your business short-term goals, long-term goals are aligned with the data strategy. Number 2 is to make sure that you have the execution roadmap. So making sure that you have the translating the vision into execution roadmap to achieve the business strategy vision. What do you need to put in place? Example could be, say, hey, you want to achieve or uplift in your top line revenue. So for this, you need to have a look at your CRM data. How can I gain market intelligence via the data you have? Okay. Number 3 could be is the building the capability, right? So here is depending on the use cases you have, the projects you want to build, the capability. For example, in short term, you're doing more disruptive type of descriptive type of projects. So you don't need to hire 5 PhDs in machine learning to start with. You can do that afterwards in the long run. Okay. Then you have business process. Make sure that you got the right process in place to be able to I've just had a really bad attack of this cough, which is causing me some problems. But anyway, I want to finish off with the last key step here, which is the building the culture and mindset. This is very, very important to make sure that you build the right culture and the right mindset to be able to build and have a data-driven organization. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is more around how do you make sure that, how can you basically pick up this up and start building something out and start getting on with finding out how do you start, which projects do you start on, where do you start, where do you, what are the key projects that are ripe for you to get going with. And now this is a framework that we've used, that I've come up with using basically in terms of looking at feasibility and impact. And where you have high impact and you have high feasibility, that's where your quick wins are. And where you have low impact and you have low feasibility, so those are the two kind of extremes that you have. You have quick wins and you postpone those projects there at the bottom end. Where you have high feasibility and you have low impact, you don't want to be picking these up and start doing these and kicking these off straight away, because purely you have high feasibility. When we say feasibility, what we mean is you have all the capability, you have the people, the process, the technology to be able to execute on these projects, but the impact is very small. It doesn't show a huge amount of impact to your organization and your business. That's the challenge. I wouldn't recommend that you pick something up and you can, you go ahead and do that. You can use that time to focus on these ones, the more strategic and the evaluative projects that you've got, basically. So you need to balance that. You need to balance which projects you take, which projects you're going to park up, and which ones you're going to take up and take forward. The last thing I want to talk to you about is more around the people and the culture. Now, there needs to be a cultural and mindset shift, as we said before. And what the key thing that comes down to culture and mindset is the fear of unknown, fear of automation, fear of exposure. When you're looking at you're looking at diffusing this capability within your organization, you need to bring your people on board. And the way you achieve that is by building something called psychological safety. This is very, very important within your project that you have to be able to take this on. And the reason why I'm sharing this study here is because when I was at Google, we did this study to understand what's the most, the key recipe in having high performing teams, and that is psychological safety. And thinking of data as being something that's not used to punish, but it's actually used to empower people. So this is very, very important. Also, the semantics, the language used is very important when you're talking about data-driven organization. Make sure that you use language that's understandable to people, and that needs to be driven by top-down leadership, right? That needs to be done. So I just want to stop here because I feel like I'm losing my voice, which I excuse and I apologize. And I want to stop here and thank you so much for your time, for bearing with me throughout this. To take on a couple of
Thanks,
questions.
Aamar.
If anybody has any questions,
I hope your throat is feeling better a little bit because I had the feeling that it's a little bit of a cough, but don't worry about it. I think your message came across quite well. We have time for one quick question. I saw a lot of people were commenting on this question earlier. So if it's okay, I would like to ask you one quick question before we finish up the session today. I think it's a question that's very valid and very much in line with what you presented. The question is, I'm projecting it on the screen right now. It's from Sebastian asking the question, building a data-driven organization that uses AI, it makes sense to want to use the most cutting edge and latest technology to get ahead. Some of the latest technology is still premature with some issues though. Would you recommend using more premature technology or using more reliable but more sub-recent technology?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, Sebastian. Look, I think it depends. I don't think there's a yes or a no question or a 1 or 0 question here. It depends on your organization. It depends on the data you are handling. The most important thing is what type of data are you working with, and what type of capability are you looking to build. For an enterprise organization that is highly regulated, for example, that has highly sensitive data in there, or the data you're dealing for your use cases that you have is sensitive, then obviously use a more trusted, mature framework for that. For anywhere where you are, where the data sensitivity is not that high, then you can experiment, right? That's ideal place to use experimental technology to see what type of results you get back. So I would first ask those questions before I start building the capability.
Very good. I think that's a very good answer. I also have one other question coming in. I think we have time for one last one.
Yeah.
Let me project it on the screen as well. This one is from Wayne. And Wayne is asking, we often see data-driven organizations is a big organization or a multinational corporation. But how would it be possible to do this in a more smaller enterprise?
I think, look, it's a great question. I think it doesn't have to be for big multinational organization. It doesn't have to be for large organization or large companies. It's probably a lot easier for a smaller company to become data-driven than it is for a large organization, because you have less baggage or you have less complications as a business. So you can, in fact, you can purely use the data to start making decisions. Let me give you an example of an e-commerce shop, a small shop that's owned by 1 or 2 people. You look through the data and you think, what are the sales we are having as a small jewelry shop or a small handbag shop? Where is the most amount of sales coming from? What does the data tell us? And what is the most popular product that we have, right? You use that data to then strategize your marketing campaign based on that data you've picked up, right? You target those customers, you target those people that have liked that bag or whatever, and you have your social media strategy based on that. That's just one example where you can leverage the data as a small company to make the most of the data you have, and then it's a lot easier for you to become and do that, rather than having a multinational company where you have to take that data, you have to build a big data pipeline system or capability, you have to have operational capability, you have to have processes sorted out, etc., etc. So I think it's a lot easier to do it for SME.
Good. Thank you so much, Aamar. I think we're at the end of our time, so I'm going to leave it at these questions. Thanks for sharing your time, your insight, and your knowledge with us today. I hope you had fun at your first time at Big Data Days as well. It's really been a pleasure to have you today. I hope your throat recovers quickly.
And apologies for that, because I was in 2 minds whether to do this or not. But I was make sure that I was so passionate and coming in. I was so keen to deliver this. I thought, let's just do it, see what happens. If it doesn't last that long, it doesn't last that long. I'll have to do something. But yeah, I hope it was okay for you. If there's anything else I can help with, please reach out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Aamar, for your time. And in the background, we already have our next presenters waiting. So let me quickly project that onto the screen.
Thank you very much.
So after our keynote, in around 10 minutes, we're going to go into our 2-track division again. And we have 2 different tracks to choose from, depending on what you like and what you'd like to learn most about. It's slightly different formats. In track number 1, we have Majid Hassan, who's the Chief Technology Officer at SGNI. And he's going to talk about the future of enterprise, a deep dive into big data and NLP applications. On track number 2, we have a workshop, the second workshop that we are hosting during this conference. And Dean Wang is going to take us on a journey to look at auto machine learning and the future of machine learning for the masses. So more practical, technical, and hands-on session. So pick whichever session is most of interest. I know it's always a difficult choice. And we look forward to seeing you back in around 10 minutes. Thanks, everyone.